in grocery stores lately. But could you have bought a maple wash product and not even know it? Maple washing is when companies use a maple leaf or Canadian-esque branding to promote, well, products that are not made in Canada. And CBC has received a bunch of examples of this practice. Like this one, sent to us by a viewer. She found this asparagus at her local no-frills store. But look closely. This asparagus is labeled on the shelf like it's a product of Canada. But when you read the tag, it's produce of Peru that was distributed by a company in Los Angeles. And there are other examples too, like this avocado oil from Sobeys. It was reported to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency in April. Everything about this product's shelf label, from the red maple leaf to the words made in Canada, might make you think you were doing your part to buy Canadian. But the small print on the bottle revealed it was actually imported. Federal regulations meant to prevent this kind of practice state that food labels and in-store signage must be accurate and not misleading.
Canada just blew up over a food scandal that's bigger than any province expected. We're talking fake Canadian oranges.
It's been 3 years since we've had this car, and I've never
Right about the head.
This is exactly what it looked
Fun
like
amount of
beforehand,
specifics,
and
man.
this is what I
Price hikes and grocery stores caught red-handed. It's bad. Canadians are furious and lawsuits are flying left and right, and the so-called boycott in U.S. products, that's backfiring in real time badly. Trump warned Canada about weak leadership and phony deals, and now Canada's living proof. Let's break down what just happened. Have a look at this.
Let's bring in Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director at Agri-Food Analytics Lab. Sylvain, thank you for being here. What do we know about this class action?
Well, I think the lawyer is pointing at some practices that we saw in grocery stores where the maple leaf was used as an artifact to inflate prices or to encourage people to buy certain products that weren't necessarily Canadian. Actually, one reader sent me pictures of Canadian oranges. Of course, we don't grow oranges in Canada. The next day, they were labeled as oranges from Egypt, but 15% cheaper. That's clearly a case of maple washing. And I think a lot of people are running out of patience. And that's why we are seeing more of these class actions.
Money being made off
simply because there's just no tolerance for these things now.
There it is. Washing fake Canadian oranges and grocery giants caught red-handed. And where's Carney? Silent mum's the word as always. It is really disheartening to see what this level of weak leadership looks like. Canadians are getting scammed while elites look the other way. Trump called this years ago. When you don't put your people first, the system collapses, and now it's happening. I'm going to talk about what this really means. You're walking into a grocery store, right? You're trusting the labels. Now, some of you, I'm an advocate of this, flip it around and see the ingredient list, see what's really going on. But in general, you look at the labels and you're told you're buying Canadian, right? I mean, you look, it's okay, Canadian, yeah, got it. It's supposed to mean local, fresh, supporting your farmers. Instead, it's a marketing scam. Oranges labeled Canadian, almonds too. Now, you might think, oh, that's funny. That's not funny. That's insulting. Canadians aren't dumb, they're not stupid, and they're finally saying enough is enough. This isn't some small mistake. This is a deliberate, intentional thing. They slapped a maple leaf on a product, marked it up, and hoped nobody notices. That's a cash grab, plain and simple. And the worst part, it's been going on for months under the radar, and only now, with lawsuits and social media outrage, are these grocery chains scrambling to cover their butts. Like, it's just wrong. Why would... I understand why, but why? And here's the reality. While Carney's government is playing politics and dreams of bigger offices that, first off, like they're not even finished still. He hasn't even gotten like fully staffed, which is insane. And he's taking credit for projects that aren't even his, that have been there for years. And he's redressing it and saying, oh yeah, look at the progress we made. We're going to do this, 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 this. Copper mines. We're going to have, you know, new gas, LNG terminals. Okay, yeah, you got all the stuff that you've said before. But it's not your stuff. It's not your ideas. You didn't come up with it.
Well, the other thing about the gas and everything, they're not letting any
Canadians are left footing this bill. It's wrong. The price is already sky high for food, and families are struggling. And now we're finding out
make money off from it.
Part of it is just lies. Like, no wonder there is no trust. The truth is, this is more than a grocery store issue. It's about honesty, integrity. It's about whether institutions in Canada can be trusted at all. And right now, no. It's a big fat no.
Very interesting. So, as Canadians shopping in grocery stores, what do we need to be looking for to make sure that what we're buying is actually Canadian?
Well, actually, I encourage people to denounce and use social media. Make sure that there is a mistake. And in the case of Canadian oranges, and I've seen some Canadian almonds as well, by the way, Renee, just go to management and tell them there's a mistake, and they'll fix it. But if they don't, take pictures and denounce. And I can tell you, Renee, within hours, grocers will respond. They do look at social media, and they will respond and address issues almost immediately. But in the meantime, I do think since we are in September, many months after the start of this Buy Canadian campaign that we're in right now, I think the lack of rigor is just not excusable anymore. People are expecting grocers to be extremely careful.
Big grocery has not exactly been in the good books of every Canadian over the past, the recent years. What effect could this have on consumers' trust of grocery stores?
Well, as you know, as of Thursday of this week, people can actually claim their $100 due to the bread.
There you go. Social media fixing what weak leaders will not.
Every time you see an older guy with a much younger woman, you can bet he's doing this 15-second shower trick.
The people. The digital town square is coming out.
I'll nuke them as soon as they
Canadians
can.
are shaming grocery stores into action. Good. While Carney is sitting on the sidelines pretending nothing's wrong, Trump is right. Public pressure works. But it shouldn't take ordinary people to do the job of regulators. That's failed leadership at the top. Now, here's where things are going to get serious. Canadians aren't just venting online anymore. They're heading straight to court. The class action lawsuit over this maple washing scam is a turning point. Why? Because for years, big grocery chains have pushed boundaries, tested consumers' patience, and banked on people shrugging it off. Not this time. There's too much chaos. There's too much about it that just is wrong. There's so many other things going wrong in addition to it. People are tired of it all. And now they're acting. Families are already feeling ripped off at every turn or every time they step into the supermarket. Prices are climbing higher, labels lie, and at the end of the day, the big corporations still cash in. But when lawyers start circling around, smelling blood in the water, when class actions stack up and the numbers get really high, suddenly those executives just can't hide behind flashy ads anymore and patriotic maple leaves. They're forced to face accountability. And Canadians haven't forgotten the bread price fixing scandal 14 years. Remember that? Billions of dollars stolen from ordinary households, and what real punishment came of it? Nothing. That's why this lawsuit is different. It isn't just about oranges or almonds, it's about trust. About whether Canadians should ever believe in the system and how it will protect them, or if they'll always be left on their own. It's a pretty hectic time. And here's the blunt truth. Canadians wouldn't even be in this position if their leaders just did their job and had a backbone. Trump hammered corporate corruption head on. He did it in part with RFK Jr., getting rid of food dyes, forcing companies to be more honest. And they're like, oh no, I'm losing money. It was like, well, too bad. How about we have healthier children? How about we don't lie to the American people? Canadians want that. Carney let it slide. And now the people are taking matters into their own hands. The lawsuit is proof patience has snapped, it's gone, and the fight has just begun.
This section here traditionally would have been filled with U.S. corn. Customers love it because it's a great product. What started as a big display has been shrunk.
In response to U.S. tariffs and President Trump's threats to annex Canada, 71% of Canadian consumers say they intend to buy fewer American products this year. That's having an impact. The U.S. economy could lose up to 0.3% of its GDP, or about $90 billion in 2025, due to the boycott of American goods and the decline in foreign tourism.
Very briefly,
Giancarlo Tremarchi is the owner of Vince's Market, a Canadian grocery store chain with 4 locations. He's seen the backlash firsthand.
Talk to me a bit about how the Buy Canada movement has affected you at the grocery store. Our customers are demanding from us as much Canadian.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. This is really, I wanted to do it on the leaving. This is kind of connected, but not exactly. Turley or the other one? I'm going to go to this one. Here we go. Let me enlarge it. I think I need to turn up the volume over here. How's the volume out there?
Oh, yeah.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. For those who have been in this channel for a while, you've known that I'm as conservative as it gets. I love my country.
I don't know.
I love
Flex.
being
I don't
Canadian.
know if he did get fired or not.
But I also love
I
the
heard about
idea
it. I know there
of
was some
Alberta
backlash
becoming
on
its
him. I don't
own
know if he got fired
republic,
or
its own
not. Arizona,
independent nation.
kind of wonder.
The reason for that, I've stated on many occasions, that it's strictly
By the way,
because
hi,
of
Flex?
an authoritarian
Felix,
government.
I should know that. It was Felix the Cat back in the day.
Within Ottawa. Sorry, I'm trying to think of how to carefully say this. That essentially has a grip on the nation in terms of an East versus West policy basis on how they're able to stay in office.
Yeah, they take their taxes from the West.
Alberta, as well as other Western provinces, for the longest time since Confederacy, haven't had a fair vote when it comes to deciding who's in charge of the country. In fact, our Senate seats are stacked against us. The ridings, again, Canada's very different from the United States in the Electoral College, that its votes are calculated based on a per capita basis, meaning the majority of the seats that are won in the House of Commons to determine who's in charge of the country, who becomes prime minister, are in a small section of southern Ontario, where approximately
Montreal,
half
Quebec,
of the country lives and resides.
And Toronto, a bit. Although they're not.
That stacks the deck against Alberta. The reason for the long setup in the history lesson is that Danielle Smith has come out, and ramblings on social media are all over the place. I see United Conservative Party voters that are leaving Danielle Smith in terms of their
volume down.
support. I see other people that are saying it's not a big deal, we got to focus on independence. And then there's statements coming from Danielle Smith that are saying, is independence even going to happen? I guess my biggest thing here, folks, is I'm not going to throw my opinions around too much on this video. And for those who think that I'm here to talk about, hey, Alberta's leaving again, I got to tell you, this is a different tone of video because, to be completely honest, I don't know what's happening anymore. And I think that's why I'm a little fatigued and a little concerned about what happens with this country.
You might get
and it plays into everybody in every province. So stick with me here, because this isn't a pro-Alberta thing.
Kind of make us more conservative.
We've been told for the last. Let's go back as far back as the Freedom Convoy.
They have a lot of minerals and stuff.
Non-confidence votes are coming. Elections are coming. People are going to vote out Justin Trudeau. We're going to see change. We're going to see a brighter day for Canada. Things will be affordable again. People will be able to get jobs again. Policies will be changed. Everybody got their hopes up.
If you are sleeping in a position like this, you are wrecking your body and your breathing. Chronic neck pain happens when your cervical...
There you go.
Everybody clung to hope, and I am one of the largest purveyors of hope on this platform to say, hey guys, I know it's bad, but we move on to the next thing. We keep our heads held high. We try to do the right thing to move forward as a nation, to fix the problems. We'll find the next way forward. That's not happening here.
All the time.
When you jumble up the word salad answers that we get from our politicians, and anybody who's been in our live streams has heard me say before that as Pierre Poilievre was running to be Prime Minister of Canada, people constantly excused the behavior going on with the piss poor planning of his election team, saying, oh, Pierre's playing 4D chess. He knows what he's doing. We just got to trust you guys. We just got to trust Pierre's just, he's doing this on purpose. You see, he's doing it to get the votes. He has to please the people in that small section of Ontario where the votes matter. He's not really going to screw the rest of us. And then anytime he said anything that benefited us, oh, well, he's going to ruin his votes in that part of Ontario. We just got to play safe, guys. We got to wait. You know, he can't say the things he's supposed to say. How did that work out for us? And that goes back to the problem I've said, where a small portion in terms of geographical size of the country decides who's in charge. If those are the politics we play, we never get a fair seat. Fast forward to Alberta, that as soon as the election was rearing its head toward the end of the finish line, Danielle Smith gave Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre a 6-month warning. She told them, you will have 6 months to meet 12 of our biggest demands, some of those included, but are not all inclusive too. Repealing Bill C-69, which is the No More Pipelines Act, or at least that's what it's dubbed as, the tanker ban off the coast of British Columbia.
Taking away all that.
You've got
they're crippling their economy.
Emission caps. All of those things Danielle Smith wanted to see go so that Alberta could open its economic potentials. We showed videos in recent weeks of her claiming, look, there's over trillions of dollars sitting in the ground that we could push forward to share with the rest of the country in a unified Canada. It would create 150,000 jobs, while the country is stating that it's lost just 100,000 this last month. And to that, I held my head high. Danielle knows what she's doing. We're 2 weeks away to the date of Danielle's 6-month time limit coming to a close. And Mark Carney not only hasn't done anything on that list,
because he's a commie,
but he has announced that there's going to be breaks for Ontario car manufacturers. The EV mandate is gone. Wind turbines are going to be built in Nova Scotia. But Alberta,
catch on fire. One of those.
As he came to Edmonton, as he sat in our capital city on a retreat, which we all paid for, by the way, he smugly looked up and said, there's no plans in our accelerated projects office for Alberta. Nothing is coming their way on that agenda. We're going to move things over to Nova Scotia. So immediately, Premier Smith knows nothing's coming to Alberta. None of those 12 points of interest are going to be addressed 2 weeks out from the deadline. Yet she approaches the media and says, well, we've had very productive conversations. We've talked things out. I think great things are coming for Alberta. I think Mark Carney really understands what we're going through. And I know that this 7, almost 8-minute setup, people are saying get to the point. We have to discuss this in order to get to the point. Because amidst all that word salad, amidst all those 4D chess moves that are going on, as an Albertan and a Canadian, I don't know about you guys, but I'm fed up with the games. I'm fed up with the try to guess which side your politicians are on, try and figure out where they stand. And it's funny because I reached out a week and a half ago to Danielle's people and spoke to you guys in a video saying, look, they've clarified to me they will not push a referendum question for independence on next year's ballot. But a citizen-led initiative, that could be the answer. She will support, and I had in text, we will fully support a citizen-led initiative. I don't know if that's coming at this point.
The body scanner reveals the brutal truth about your body that your regular scale will never tell you. For weeks,
I understand, and I even said to somebody in the YouTube comments, it was either YouTube or the Twitter comments, forgive me, I answer a lot of people during a day, that until we have something in writing, I don't really consider anything definitive. That's the way I've always worked in business. It's the way I handle myself in my day-to-day life. If you want something concrete, get it in writing. Well, now you've got Danielle Smith at a presser yesterday. And these tweets like this are now circulating on the internet. Disgraceful. Her party membership and grassroots wants a referendum, yet she ignores the democratic will of the people who elected her. The majority of United Conservative Party voters want to leave Canada. What's the end game here? And this is the problem that I start asking myself this very same question. You know, Danielle, and I do know the rules, folks. I do know that it's treasonous for Danielle to turn around and say, hey, I support independence while she doesn't yet have a mandate from people. I know all those things. But the word games, the nonsense, she needs to be specific every single time. And this was my gripe when we had to confirm that she would allow a citizen-led initiative. She speaks in tongues. She speaks in code. Just say what her people said to me. Our party cannot put this forward. A citizen-led initiative will, and we're hopeful that it goes through. That's all they have to say. And when I say hopeful that it goes through, I'm talking because that was the whole reason they changed Bill 54 on Independence Day, of all days. But listen to the rhetoric said here, because this is what's painting the picture where people are fed up.
Jason Kenney has spoken out about the possibility of a sovereignty referendum, suggesting that if such a vote was allowed, it would destroy families, tear apart communities, and that he'd be willing to take on a public role to combat it if it does happen. Comments?
Well, this is why I'm doing everything I can to prevent a vote, because Mr. Lukasik's vote.
You're trying to prevent the vote because
yes,
it
no
will win.
question. It is a separatist referendum. He may be trying to characterize it differently. But if you ask people if you want to remain in Alberta, yes or no, there are implications if people answer no.
Jason.
So she says there's implications. Now, this is where the internet, and I know this is going to contradict what I've just said, because I tried my best, as multiple people sent me this yesterday saying, Fringe, what do you make of this? Why is Danielle, and you can see in the tweet, this is why I'm doing everything in my power to ensure there is not a vote. End quote. People are saying, so Danielle doesn't stand with independence. This is the same problem we have where we asked for clarification a few weeks ago. Danielle is trying to keep a unified Canada, according to her. She wants diplomacy until a citizen-led initiative moves forward. So I think, again, what's happening here, the reason the internet's freaking out, is because words are getting twisted like word salad, and people are misunderstanding her. But there comes a problem with this. With that very deadline looming in 2 weeks and nothing being done by Mark Carney, with nothing being put on Alberta's project list, people in Alberta right now cannot get jobs. We have the highest unemployment rate in the country. Danielle Smith will not be able to quell the tempers of Albertans in 2 weeks if she doesn't take a more aggressive stance against Mark Carney. The fact she came out this last Friday and said, oh, we had a wonderful discussion and Mark Carney really understands the frustrations of Albertans, yet all while saying there's no projects on the table, is only going to cost her points. And stick with me. I know it's a longer video, but stick with me, because this paints the possible problem that Alberta will have. Alberta will crumble. And I'm going to show you why. You now have Jeff Raff tweeting out, so Mark Carney has lied to Danielle Smith again, this time about the firearms buyback being voluntary. It's, quote, required. Get ready to comply. Now, it shows here, in the infamous gun buyback, Danielle said, nah, it's voluntary. Now it says in a statement to City News, the federal government has now clarified its use of the term voluntary in describing the so-called buyback program. Down here, the statement says individual firearms owners will have to dispose of their prohibited assault-style firearms and devices or ensure they are deactivated before the amnesty order expires to comply with the law. So it's mandatory. It is not voluntary by any means necessary. So you're going to lose the support of farmers, the rural vote. You're going to lose, because again, word salad has consequences. You need to be clear. And this is why I'm raising issue. Because a few weeks ago, I got blasted in the comments for questioning why isn't Danielle being clear on things. We got clarification from her office, and here she was spewing word salad again. Here's another example with the gun buyback. You now have her newest project she's announced for Alberta citizens. People are concerned about digital IDs.
Did you know that sugar and pink salt can make you forget you ever had type 2? Honestly, I don't want to sound rude, but I'm tired.
Sorry about the ads.
Danielle's now announcing Alberta will be the first province to add a Canadian citizenship marker to driver's licenses and ID cards, strengthening Alberta's election system and protecting the integrity of our democratic process by ensuring that only eligible citizens cast ballots. So you can see down here on an Alberta driver's license, it will now have a Canadian marking on the license. This will be easy to forge. Very easy to forge.
It's looking more and more
like fake identification goes around all the time.
To me.
So I don't know how they're going to combat that. But what's more going into these cards, folks, is your medical history, if you so choose, as well as, so again, your driver's license and other records all tied in to one identification card. Danielle talked about this in a press conference so that you don't have to carry around your Alberta Health or any of that stuff anymore. It's all tied into one card, ladies and gentlemen. This is what people are worried about. This is the start of some form of a digital ID with all of your information being on their records in one place. I think this is good. I think if you can prevent fraudulent votes, all the better. But this is where people are raising concern. So the people concerned about digital ID, they're going to lose support in some groups with Danielle Smith. You even have Mark Nixon coming out because people are saying, wow, get out of Canada while you can.
Globalist.
Danielle Smith introduces Agenda 2030 Global Digital ID. Mark Nixon has to try and fan the flames. This is factually wrong. Danielle Smith is not rolling out Agenda 2030. Alberta's new ID is a physical card. It simply adds your citizenship status to your driver's license. It also helps prevent election fraud. No digital
fraud
anything.
Part would be good in the citizenship thing.
Now, what this person was talking about was mixed word salad that Danielle said there will also be an app where you can have the My Alberta card, not a driver's license, the My Alberta card where everything, or the Alberta wallet, sorry. The Alberta wallet app will have everything tied to it. So while she's making a point, she's just got it confused with what Mark Nixon's trying to defend. Again, words matter. And here's where we get to the head of the problem, folks. I have heard from my sources, I will just say my sources, as well as rumblings on the internet, that there's a possibility that multiple other parties are now forming in the wake of the discussion of independence. One of the biggest problems we run into in Alberta is that Naheed Nenshi is running against Danielle Smith. And while I understand some people like Cam Davies and what the Alberta Republican Party wants to push forward, I have said many times, I like Cam as a person. He's wonderful to talk to. I don't agree with adding another party into the mix because you split the vote. Danielle Smith, if you go back to her last election, she won her seat as premier by very thin margins. When you mix all of this controversy with the referendum vote, with digital IDs, with all of the things Danielle's talking about doing here, the gun program, you're going to tip the scales of those voters. And if this is true with these parties, think about what happens to Alberta and how things get split in the future. I wanted to show you guys this. Here's a record of parties that have formed just in the last little while in Alberta. Now, none of these parties are currently active. But take a look here. The Alberta Independence Party, Alberta Alliance Party, Separation Party of Alberta, the Wild Rose Party, Evergreen Party of Alberta, the Alberta First Party, Western Freedom Party of Alberta. All of these parties were formed, and I've got 3 other pages of this. It's not just this one. But I'm only going to show the one because the video is getting long, folks. The problem when you spawn all these parties, the problem even when you just introduce Cam Davies with the Alberta Republicans, is while their intentions are noble, the biggest problem right now with Alberta is if Danielle Smith starts to deteriorate her vote, if she doesn't speak up in 2 weeks, when Mark Carney fails on his promise to deliver any of the 12 things Danielle asked him to take care of.
Are you researching dental implants?
There's a lot of dental offices that'll talk about doing their teeth in their.
Albertans are going to do just what Danielle threatened. They will give her a national unity crisis because they can't find jobs, they can't pay their bills, they can't survive in this province
they got
anymore.
Carbon tax.
They don't want to deal with the crime. They don't want to deal with
oil and drilling,
any
and
of this
like that.
flip-flopping
Won't
word
let you even go out
salad.
in the friggin' woods.
People
without
want a
finding you.
direction. And if Danielle Smith isn't going to give it to them, folks, my number one fear right now is that between these parties, between the discussions, between the push for Alberta independence, we are going to see a vote split that does nothing more than give the majority of votes to Naheed Nenshi. And if that man gets his claws on this province, ladies and gentlemen, not being able to find a job is the last thing you're going to have to worry about.
Total commie.
He will not allow for any referendum questions. He will remove and repeal the laws that give us any form of a voice. He has already stated that. And he will ensure that this province is rolling over in debt, Marxism, communism. Everyone in this province
all part of their
will
plan.
go broke overnight. So what Danielle Smith had better do, and do very quickly, I mean yesterday, is state her intention to some degree clearly. No more excuses, no more 4D chess. I'm getting off the fence here. I'm telling you right now, if Danielle doesn't say something in the next 2 weeks that gives me confidence that she has the intention for Alberta to prosper, and she drops this act with Mark Carney, if she doesn't at least push back against the federal government, I will hereby pledge that she will lose my support as a voter. I am that terrified of what's going to happen. Because if nothing happens, folks, the parties are going to form. People are going to start complaining about independence, that she's not listening. Everything's going to divide. It's going to split. I would urge everybody watching this video, if you live in Alberta, contact the Premier's office now. Forward this video to Danielle Smith. Tag her on Twitter. I know she watches the channel, but we need an outpouring of people tagging her online. Tag her on Facebook. Tag her people. Email her office. Call her office. Tell them Albertans demand a referendum ballot, and we also demand transparency. We need to know where you stand 2 weeks from now. I don't want to see Danielle Smith lose her seat. I don't. But I miss the good old days of Ralph Klein, where you knew where at least your politicians stood, where you knew that you could count on them, where you knew that they had their best interests at heart for the working people of this province. Because what we've seen from a federal government, folks, are pigs at a trough and the new mafia, the new mob. They're here to line their pockets. They're here to please their investors. Mark Carney himself has said, policy pushes profits.
I can see.
So what's Danielle doing?
Starting to work.
And how much longer are we going to play this game of diplomacy before the province of Alberta starts showing some teeth? Let me know if you're as scared as I am down below in the comments. I can assure you, folks, that if other parties rise, they won't get my support either. Because honestly, if Danielle falls before we get to a referendum vote, I give up. I don't know what else to do.
They need that
at this
referendum. That guy that's taken over for the turd up there, Trudeau, is more commie than they are. I think I'm going to go. Let's go to about Alberta leaving here. This is a good video on this.
That Alberta could become the 51st state of the United States of America. Low taxes, not have to deal with all of the green energy, weird policies that's hurting farmers in Alberta and everything else.
For this potential independent province, or if it decides to become incorporated into the United States, I think Americans would welcome that because this is an energy-rich.
Alberta just announced its intent to become the 51st state of the United States, and this is no joke. Every Albertan is talking about how if the independence referendum fails, they'll put...
No, let me rewind on just a bit right here. She made a deal with the United States to sell oil directly to the United States and the pipeline and all this going in. And this is the head of Canada, and somehow he's blocking it. His party is, and they're a super majority in Quebec and all that kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. So their other option is to leave Canada, that province, maybe become part of USA or become their own country, which I think it's more likely they'd end up as part of the United States. They temporarily separate and then become. I think you have to totally separate first before they could become part of the United States.
If the independence referendum fails, they'll push for statehood so their resources can finally be valued. In both scenarios, Alberta's voice matters. Staying in Canada, not even an option.
This is the final.
What does
nail
everyone
in the
think?
coffin,
They want
I
him to become part of the United States?
And Danielle Smith, the premier,
And
she's not even hiding it
other
anymore.
provinces?
She's straight up saying separatist sentiment is at a record high. This isn't some fringe internet
I wonder
crowd
why.
yelling at
Only
clouds.
taxing the
This is
living crap
real,
out of them
and she admits she has never seen
and
anything
blocking
like
everything
it.
from being
Now,
done.
if you've followed Alberta history, you know people have been talking about independence since Pierre Trudeau's days. But the numbers were never this high. The polling right now, 50 to 55% of Albertans are leaning pro-independence. Let that sink in. That's not a fringe. That's a majority.
Strongly,
For the first time, the idea of breaking
50%
away
in the
isn't just
polling
fantasy,
are
it's a
definitely gonna go
legitimate
vote for
option.
it.
So what does that mean?
And Premier Danielle Smith says she's never seen separatist sentiment this high. Thanks to a bill that was quietly passed this spring, Albertans could trigger a full-blown referendum on independence with just 177 signatures. A number of organizers say they're well on their way to reaching that goal.
It means Alberta is being pushed into a corner. The options are narrowing, and it comes down to two choices. Either independence, which is already on the ballot path, or joining the United States as the 51st state. Staying in Canada? Forget it. That option is basically dead because people don't want to keep playing Ottawa's game. You can already see it. The narrative is shifting from what if we
Billions and
left
billions of
to
dollars
what happens
each
when we
month,
leave.
each
That's how
year
real
are
this has
going
gotten.
to Quebec.
And you can certainly see that this is no longer a fringe movement because Albertans and Western Canadians
And
have
they could
talked
even
about
do better than
separation,
that
about independence.
A lot of
Now,
this
why
stuff
is
wasn't
this
blocked.
happening? Let's be honest. Ottawa has been acting like Alberta doesn't even exist. Prime Minister Mark Carney, the so-called big brain banker who came in promising to save Canada, is proving to be the biggest gift to the independence movement. You know what his priorities are? Not Alberta, that's for sure. While the province is boiling over, Carney is hopping jets to Kyiv like it's his favorite vacation spot.
Check this out. I'm going to show you how
How
I
about
afforded this
that?
car. Okay, you ready? All right, 100.
I'll nuke
3
them as
times
quick
in
as I
1
can.
year.
Industrial carbon tax that drove hundreds of billions of investment to the United States at Canada's expense. That there is the key. I'm going to come back to that. He says the champagne will be pouring out of the Trump Tower when they get the news.
And while he's shaking hands and doing photo ops with Zelensky, he's sending $6.6 billion of Canadian money over to Ukraine. $6.6 billion.
Oh, they
Meanwhile,
got it from
back home,
Alberta.
Alberta is screaming, "Hello, we're drowning here." And Ottawa's response is basically, "Sorry, can't talk right now. Too busy pretending to be the savior of Europe."
Governments should have to have some kind of consequence for promising things and then never delivering. It's deception.
And remember those campaign promises? Carney stood up and said he was going to get tough on the United States. He was going to play hardball. He was going to show America that Canada wouldn't be pushed around. Yeah, guess what? He later admitted it was all just posturing. Straight up confession, he exaggerated. Translation, he lied. He knew he wasn't going to do it, but hey, it sounded good during an election. Classic politician move, promise the moon, deliver a handful of dust.
Just because it's not on this list doesn't mean it's not coming. Don't worry, Alberta. We'll keep dangling that carrot on the stick in hopes that you'll get one little breadcrumb.
We wouldn't have to pay the.
Meanwhile, Canadians are already some of the highest taxed people in the democratic world.
Canada has every time.
That's not me being dramatic. That's just a fact.
Would go down
you look at the numbers and it's painful. People are paying through the nose, and instead of seeing that money used to fix problems at home, billions get shipped overseas. And as if that isn't enough, Carney's government is already hiding an $80 billion deficit. Think about that. The guy's only been in office for a few months, and he's already got an $80 billion hole tucked under the rug. And you know what the scary part is?
It's because
they got what we know about.
Legal problem there too.
Economists are warning it could get worse.
This is the first time I have ever seen the numbers this high.
They won't be able to use those.
The viability of independence to be this possible and this potentially real. And I've never seen the argument so strong. But I
way worse. So yeah, if you're sitting in Alberta, watching all this, it's not hard to understand why people are saying enough is enough. Ottawa keeps shoveling money east and abroad, while the West gets the crumbs. And people are done waiting for change that never comes. The frustration is boiling over, and Carney's globalist obsession is pouring gasoline on the fire.
Now, the part of
largely on social programs, because Quebec refuses to use the oil it's sitting on, unlike Alberta. So when she was furious about this at a town hall meeting and saying, why can't we lower taxes any more than Alberta? Why can't we spend more money on the public school system?
And here's the part that really drives Albertans crazy. Equalization. The billion-dollar drain. Every single year, Alberta is forced to send $20 to $25 billion to Ottawa in equalization transfers. $20 to $25 billion. Imagine what that could do if it stayed right here in Alberta.
Taxes.
Better schools, lower taxes, better infrastructure, you name
it.
Instead, it's shipped out to other provinces that somehow get to act like Alberta's piggy bank.
And of course, for those of you who don't know, that's when Ottawa extorts money from so-called have provinces to dispense it to so-called have not provinces. And
Danielle Smith doesn't mince words on this. At her town halls, she flat out calls it extortion. And she's not wrong.
It is.
Ottawa is literally taking Alberta's wealth and handing it to Quebec so they can splash it on social programs. Quebec, by the way, sits on its own oil reserves but refuses to touch them. They won't drill, they won't dig, but they're more than happy to cash Alberta's checks. Every year, $2 billion goes straight into Quebec's pockets from Alberta alone. $2 billion a year, and that's just one example.
Federal government is extorting $25 billion a year from Alberta to give to other provinces, largely Quebec. So Quebec can then turn around and decide how it wants to spend Alberta's money.
Now, zoom out.
That's a lot.
Over the last 50 years, equalization has drained $600 billion from Alberta. $600 billion. Do the math, and that's about $250,000 taken from every Albertan in their lifetime. $250,000 per person. Imagine what your life would look like if you had that back. It's mind-blowing. And yet, no one in Ottawa wants to touch it. Why? Because both Liberals and Conservatives need the votes from Quebec and Ontario. So they keep the system going, and Alberta keeps footing the bill.
They could split off.
Polling suggests it's at least 50 to 55%. The momentum has not been stopped by the election of Mark Carney. If anything, it's been accelerated by the election of Mark Carney.
So when people in Alberta say Ottawa is broken beyond repair, can you really argue with them? What other conclusion are you supposed to reach when decade after decade, nothing changes? When both...
The other thing is if these Western provinces join the United States and are kind of conservative, they're going to go kind of bankrupt on the other side, and it'll show that socialism does not work. The only reason why it's kind of propped up is because they're robbing from the other provinces that do work.
Major parties are in on the same scam. You start to realize the game is rigged. And once you see that, it's really hard to unsee it. And that's exactly why independence is no longer some fantasy idea. People see the math. They see the signatures piling up. They see their premier talking about extortion and Ottawa's total neglect. And they see a prime minister flying halfway across the world while their province bleeds cash. The choice becomes simple. Why stay in a system that's designed to drain you dry?
And of course, the Conservative Party of Canada supports equalization as well because they want the votes in Ontario and Quebec, which are beneficiaries.
So let's just say it out loud. Ottawa has completely betrayed Alberta when it comes to pipelines.
Makes sense to me.
Pierre Poilievre put it on the table. Under Mark Carney, no new oil pipeline projects will be approved. None. Zero.
Well, she went and made a separate
and remember,
deal with
this
USA,
isn't just some casual shrug.
They blocked
this is an actual federal stance. What does that mean for Alberta? It means the Trudeau-era chokehold continues. Shipping bans, production caps, and industrial carbon taxes all stay in place. Nothing changes, except the pain keeps getting.
Why are you not investing
Sorry about the
in
ads.
No, seriously. Why are you not investing into one of the most
worst?
Maybe tampons and bathrooms. I don't know. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government prepares to announce the first projects of national interest it has selected. Radio-Canada has learned that no oil pipeline is on the list, according to 3 sources that have spoken to Radio-Canada.
Yeah, you remember that, like Radio-Canada and all them are government-paid media. All media up there is government-paid. The radio stations, the TV stations, all that are government money run. They're total liberal.
These aren't just policies on paper. They've gutted Alberta's future.
Like the
We're talking hundreds of billions in energy investment driven straight into the welcoming arms of the United States. Imagine that. Alberta sits on the 3rd largest oil reserves in the world, over $1 trillion worth.
They're getting
and
rich,
Ottawa
John.
says, nah, let's just hand that business to Texas. You want jobs? That's 125,000 jobs Alberta could create right now if the federal government would just get out of the way. But nope. Ottawa blocks it, and Canadians wonder why their kids move south for work.
Because Ottawa is extorting $25 billion a year from the taxpayers of Alberta. And when she talks like this, of course, people are saying, well, why do we want to stay in Canada where we have such a thing as equal?
Meanwhile, let's talk about Carney's buddies. His Brookfield firm and allied companies? They've already shifted operations to the United States. Convenient, right? As Alberta suffers, his people benefit directly from Canadian decline. It's like a rigged casino. You lose, and they cash in. Every time Alberta bleeds, they pop champagne. And somehow, we're still expected to believe this is all for national interest.
But they've
What
got
national
all those
interest?
illegal votes up
Is
there.
pushing the full story. No oil pipeline on the list of projects of national interest. So there is no national interest. If you want to offset a deficit, which, by the way, Blacklock's reporter stating that Mark Carney is hiding already an $80 billion deficit, and he's only been in office for, 3 months?
Danielle Smith tried to play it straight. She
That's
asked
a lot of
for a
money
new
for up there.
pipeline to link Alberta's oil sands to northern
Marianne.
British Columbia. Logical request, right? Give Alberta access to markets, strengthen the country, create jobs. But Ottawa dismissed her outright. They said no company would touch it under the current regulations, which is basically admitting, we made the rules so impossible, no one will ever bother trying. If that's not sabotage, what is?
I have to say, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is doing everything she can to understand why Albertans continue to want independence. And she's holding a series of town hall meetings. But you know what?
So for many Albertans, the conclusion writes itself. If Ottawa is going to kill Alberta's energy, then Alberta has no reason to stay in Ottawa's club. Because why keep paying dues to an organization that's actively destroying your livelihood? It's like paying rent on a house while the landlord smashes your windows. At some point, you stop paying
And
and
there's
walk
actually
away.
three Providences
And that
that
brings
like
us to the
everything.
fork in the road. Alberta's
That way
two
you can
paths.
connect
On one side, independence.
Alaska to the rest of
The
the United
Alberta
States.
Prosperity Project has done the homework. They've modeled it out, run the numbers, and shown that independence is absolutely viable. The energy wealth is here, the trade routes are here, and AIMCO is already set up to manage the finances. Alberta wouldn't be starting from scratch. It has the resources to actually pull it off.
So Quebec can then turn around and decide how it wants to spend Alberta's money, largely on social programs, because Quebec refuses
they're buying votes
to use the oil it's sitting on, unlike Alberta. So when
on the other side, statehood. And this isn't just fantasy anymore. Alberta is already economically integrated with the United States. Oil flows south every single day. Alberta's grain feeds American markets.
Which Warren
the
Buffett
trade corridors
makes $18 or $16 a barrel for every barrel that is, which they on a train. There's millions of barrels are being shipped by train. Which, if it was a pipeline, it would be so much cheaper and so much faster and so much more that could get to the refineries. But it's a lot more pollution and everything. But bringing it by train, but the Warren Buffett makes tons and tons of money. He makes billions of dollars every week.
Are practically designed for integration. Becoming the 51st state isn't as far-fetched as people used to think. In fact, journalist David Creighton says Americans would welcome Alberta with open arms. Why wouldn't they? Alberta is energy rich. It drives the majority of Canada's economic activity, and it would be a net contributor instead of a taker. In other words, Alberta fits the bill better than some of the states already in the Union.
That if Danielle Smith doesn't stand up at this point and say, all right, screw it, you know what? We're having a referendum. We're leaving. No more of this, we want to be like Quebec. We want more power than Quebec. The Canadian federal government has told you, hey, eventually we might care about you.
So here's the bottom line. If the 2026 referendum succeeds, Alberta launches full independence negotiations with
Moo official partner of the New York Mets. Trade like a pro with
Ottawa and international allies. That's the plan. But if the referendum fails, Alberta doesn't just roll over. The pivot is already mapped out. The same campaign infrastructure would be turned toward Washington, pressing for annexation and full statehood.
one time unthinkable, just couldn't happen. But they are now entirely possible because of the breakdown in Canada as we used to know it and the authoritarian style of the Liberal government under, first of all, Justin Trudeau and now under Mark Carney.
And that's the critical piece here. Stay in Canada is no longer an option. The menu has only two choices left, sovereignty or statehood. And that's why things feel so tense right now. Because decades of broken promises have piled up, and Western Canadians are fed up. The saying, screw the West, we'll take the rest, has basically become Ottawa's official motto. No pipelines, no energy future, no fair taxation, just endless bleeding. And it's not just Alberta anymore. Saskatchewan is right there too, looking at the same raw deal and saying, why stick around? Ottawa's refusal to act has fueled a grassroots fire.
They're liberals.
People are watching their mortgages climb, grocery bills explode, and jobs vanish. And when families start struggling just to keep the lights on, the anger doesn't stay polite. The risk of revolt intensifies because you can only push people so far before they push back.
Another bus caught
quote, there is no oil project pipeline on the table. One of them said, despite the federal government's promise to make Canada an energy superpower, Carney has never ruled out the idea of supporting the construction of a new pipeline.
Danielle Smith now sits in a tight spot. She can either stand firm with Albertans and lead the charge, or she risks being outflanked by a citizen-led referendum push that leaves her behind. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about survival. And Albertans are making it very clear they won't sit quietly while Ottawa strangles their future. So as 2026 looms, the decision becomes unavoidable. Alberta's path will define Canada's survival itself. If the independence referendum wins, Alberta becomes a sovereign nation. If it fails, Alberta takes the statehood route and pushes to join the United States as the 51st state. Either way, the federation we know today is running out of time.
Democrats in power.
Alberta
They
is
won't
leading
let
the
them come
charge,
in.
and Ottawa is too busy boarding flights
Democrats
to
won't
Kiev
let
to
them come
notice
in.
the country collapsing under its feet.
Hey, Tammy. Yeah, just listen in. That's
Director
fine.
Patel.
Hold on.
Senator
That's a
Schiff.
different video here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel.
Topic. Okay, let's go with this one. Turley on this topic.
Alberta, Saskatchewan, and even parts of British Columbia just dropped an earth-shattering WEXIT announcement. This isn't a drill. For the first time, there is now a public timetable. So the plan is for the next 12 to 18 months to let the West decide its own fate.
The province and the federal Conservatives are disappointed.
The Western provinces have just dropped a political bombshell after Ottawa flat-out rejected WEXIT.
Good beer.
And the shockwaves
they
are
probably have a
impossible
higher
to ignore.
alcohol content.
What was
don't they,
once dismissed as
John?
empty talk has erupted into a movement fueled by anger, betrayal, and a demand for respect. Canada now faces a breaking point, and the West isn't bluffing anymore.
It's an issue that's not getting a lot of attention, at least not yet in this campaign. Alienation in Western Canada. We saw a separatist group hold a rally in Edmonton recently. Might be an extreme example of what is a lot of anger in Alberta, but also in Saskatchewan.
33% of Albertans say they're ready to separate from the country. That's not a fringe number anymore. That's 1 in 3 people across the province openly saying they're done with Ottawa. And these aren't just online polls or fringe activists shouting into the
Normally
void.
you wouldn't want to leave
These are
your
town
country.
halls filled with
They're
angry
sucking that bad up
citizens,
there.
rallies where ordinary families show up with signs, and community meetings where the word independence is no longer whispered. It's shouted.
Ottawa persists in trying
It's
to
as
regulate
if
and
you
remake
had either
Alberta's
California or
electrical
New York
system from generation
running the
to
whole
transmission to distribution,
You'd wanna
which will
leave.
make life more expensive for families and put the reliability of our grid at risk.
For decades, Ottawa brushed off talk of WEXIT as political theater, a bluff that would fade once tempers cooled.
They also have this thing up there that the West doesn't like so much. It's called MAIDS. It's a government-run assisted suicide. They're talking a lot of kids into killing themselves.
But that bluff has turned into a bombshell. The provinces aren't threatening anymore. They're showing they're serious.
How serious is this movement?
It's very serious when over 100,000 of my friends and neighbors here in Alberta, 100,000 jobs have been lost since the oil downturn. And what we've seen through different political and economic agitation.
So why now? Why is this movement suddenly breaking into the mainstream? The answer lies in a long history of betrayal. Alberta and Saskatchewan don't just contribute to Canada, they power it.
What was what, John?
Oil, gas, agriculture. These aren't side industries. They are the backbone of the national economy, the reason federal budgets even function. Yet, despite carrying that weight, the West has always been treated like the unwanted child in the Federation.
The Alberta separatism movement front and center in Calgary Monday night, with supporters packing a banquet hall to discuss why they think their province should leave Canada.
Look at the numbers in Ottawa. Ontario and Quebec each get 24 seats in the Senate. The 4 Western provinces together? Also 24. It's a system that guarantees the West's voice is drowned out, no matter how much it contributes. And it's not just...
If you live here in New York, right now is the
Sorry
perfect
about the
time
ads.
to upgrade your AC
I'll
or
loop
heating
it.
system. As we near the end of summer,
just the Senate. The House of Commons is tilted by population, which means Ontario and Quebec dominate there too. Western votes don't swing elections. They barely register. For people in Alberta, that's proof that Confederation is not a
All they have to
partnership,
do is win
but a
a
rigged
couple
game
seats out
designed to
there
keep
and
Central
they can
Canada
roll.
in control.
And they're pushing ahead with their plan, even though Section 92A of the Constitution of Canada is clear that legislating and regulating the development of electricity falls within the jurisdiction of the provinces.
This frustration isn't new. The National Energy Program in the 1980s sparked the same rage. Then Trudeau's policies poured fuel on the fire. And now, Prime Minister Mark Carney seems determined to run the same playbook all over again. Heavy-handed climate rules, trade wars that punish the oil patch, and constant interference in provincial decision-making. It's déjà vu for a region that already feels ignored. The betrayal feels recycled. But this time, the anger is sharper, more organized, and harder to contain.
If implemented, the proposed federal electricity regulations will stick Canadian families and businesses with unaffordable bills and provincial governments with crushing debt.
That brings us to Alberta's biggest move yet, Bill 54. This wasn't just another piece of legislation. It was a signal flare fired straight into Ottawa's sky. For the first time, the province gave its citizens a direct legal path to trigger their own referendums. Yes, even on separation. Bill 54 lowers the threshold of signatures needed and extends the time allowed to collect them. In plain language, that means ordinary people now hold the pen to write their own future.
Really looking to take the reins and get the issue of Western alienation, Western separation, actually to a referendum vote. Now, this group, the Alberta Prosperity Project, on Monday says it has gathered and collected online support of some 240,000 Albertans for independence, of course.
And that's why this moment feels so explosive. For decades, Western alienation has been dismissed as an emotional outburst, something that flares up and dies down. But Bill 54 proves the game has changed. This isn't just talk anymore. It's law. A system is now in place that could pave the road to an actual referendum. And the numbers, 33% ready to separate, show there's enough energy to keep the movement alive.
We developed this legislation to shield the province from federal intrusions, and we're using it now because the consequences of this particular overreach would be so severe that the federal government continues to intervene in our areas of jurisdiction, continues to try to dictate how we operate in our programs and policies, and yet they fail.
The West just dropped its bombshell, and Canada's leaders can't pretend it's business as usual anymore. Ottawa rejected WEXIT, but the provinces are showing they don't need permission. They're building the tools, they're mobilizing the people, and they're putting the country on notice. The question now isn't whether WEXIT is real, it's whether Ottawa has to face it before the movement becomes unstoppable.
We all know Canada's economy is suffering right now. We've had an inflation crisis, high unemployment, declining GDP.
Danielle Smith didn't just throw down a political gauntlet, she slammed it on Ottawa's desk so hard the whole country heard the echo. 9 demands, a 6-month clock, and let's be clear, these weren't polite, could you please consider requests. These were ultimatums, plain and simple. Scrap the federal emissions cap, cancel the net zero electricity rules, repeal the tanker ban that strangles Alberta's energy exports, and put an end, once and for all, to federal oversight on the carbon tax.
She's looking to try and find out, okay, you've talked about these major projects, you've set up the major projects office, you're talking about pipelines. What are you actually going to deliver? I think that is going to be her main.
In other words, Smith wasn't asking Ottawa to tweak policy around the edges. She was asking them to tear down the foundation of their climate agenda. And she did it with a tone that said, meet us halfway, or watch national unity go up in smoke. For a premier, that's not normal political bargaining, that's political dynamite. And it shook Ottawa, because Smith made it very clear she was willing to leverage separatist anger as part of the deal. She didn't sugarcoat it. She basically said, if you want to keep Alberta in the family, then you'd better start acting like family.
Focus, it is going to be what she tries to determine, and rightly so. Like, look, Mark Carney is saying a lot of the right things, but is he delivering yet? Well, not quite.
But someone think about them being part of America.
Ottawa might pause, maybe reach for compromise.
3 of them.
But that's not what happened. Mark Carney, the freshly minted prime minister, decided to plant his flag as the great defender of Canadian unity. And in doing so, he poured gasoline on Alberta's fire. Carney rolled out tariffs that sparked trade wars, all in the name of protecting Canada's economy. He signed shiny new trade deals with Europe and Asia. And of course, he doubled down on climate-first policies. To his supporters in central and eastern Canada, this looked like strong leadership. But to Albertans, it was another round of Ottawa meddling in their backyard.
It's not as if he is failing. It's just that he's talking more than he is delivering. And so at a certain point, you've got to stop with the
The message they heard was simple.
If you are sleeping in a position like this, you are wrecking your body and your breathing. Chronic neck pain happens when your cervical...
Ottawa knows best, and the West should sit down and take it. Carney even made a bold declaration: Canada would never join the U.S., which sounded fine in Ottawa cocktail circles, but in Alberta, it completely missed the point. Nobody was asking to join the states. What they were demanding was self-determination, the right to decide how their economy, their energy, and their future are run. Carney framed it as nationalism, but in Alberta, it sounded like paternalism. Ottawa telling the West what it can and can't
Canada
be.
first, but
Actually, we've heard from the Alberta Premier multiple times, and she says she does not ultimately support the initiative, but says she will respect any outcome of a referendum vote.
And every single federal policy became Exhibit A in the case for separation.
A lot.
Bill C-69, the so-called No More Pipelines law. Proof Ottawa wants Alberta's oil in the ground, not on the market. Net zero mandates by 2035? Proof Ottawa doesn't care if Alberta freezes in the dark. The plastics ban? Proof Ottawa values virtue signals over jobs. One by one, Carney's policies looked less like national strategy and more like punishment aimed squarely at the West. That's when Alberta started shifting from talk to action. Enter what many are calling the firewall strategy. Instead of waiting for Ottawa to change, Alberta began building structures of autonomy, practical, tangible moves that look an awful lot like a province testing what life outside Confederation would feel like.
Hours, months studying this bill. We traveled all the way from Vancouver to St. John's, hearing from Canadians coast to coast.
First came the Alberta Pension Plan. Why send billions every year to the Canada Pension Plan when you could keep that money at home? Proponents argue it could mean higher payouts and more local investment. Critics say it risks destabilizing the national fund. But regardless, the message was clear. Alberta's money should serve Alberta first.
The CPP. Now, Alberta is suggesting that it's entitled to more than half of the Canada Pension Plan fund.
Then came the push for a provincial police force. The RCMP has been Canada's national symbol for over a century, but in rural Alberta, people complain response times are slow and priorities are dictated from Ottawa, not the prairies. Smith floated the idea of an Alberta Police Service, trained and deployed to handle Alberta's unique needs. It wasn't just about policing, it was about identity. A declaration that Alberta doesn't need Ottawa's badge to keep order.
Seriously, I think there's a clear list from the Alberta Premier what that looks like. So we'll see in due time. I will give him credit. I think that Tim Hodgson, the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, was actually a good sign to Alberta. So hopefully that's a healthy relationship. I live in Edmonton Centre, so I have had a minister under the Liberal government.
The most striking part? These weren't abstract debates in university classrooms or partisan think tanks. These were real discussions happening in town halls and public panels across the province. Citizens showed up, argued passionately, and began to see autonomy not as some wild separatist dream, but as a practical roadmap. Poll after poll showed growing support for the firewall measures. It was proof that Alberta wasn't just talking about independence, it was practicing it in real time. So when Ottawa rejected WEXIT, Alberta's response wasn't to sulk or back down. It was to push harder. Danielle Smith's 9 demands shook the capital. Carney's heavy-handed response stoked the anger. And Alberta's firewall strategy showed the West was preparing, brick by brick, to build a future where Ottawa's veto no longer matters.
In their areas of jurisdiction. That's what a lot of the conversation is that when the federal government often comes calling with
I've been kind of following
help,
this because I've been hoping that they leave.
And it has a lot of strings attached.
And that, more than any speech or poll number, is the bombshell Canada has to face. Alberta isn't bluffing anymore. It's building. And once those walls are high enough, the rest of Canada may wake up to find the West has already walked out the door.
I take things seriously.
I think it'd be like in
extra,
like Montana,
concerns or grievances. I take them seriously and see which ways. I mean, my job is to help solve problems.
The numbers don't lie, and right now, they're screaming that separatism isn't some backroom fantasy anymore. Take the latest Angus Reid poll. 1 in 4 Albertans, 25%, say they'd vote to leave Canada today, not next year, not someday, but right now. And here's the kicker. If the Liberals were to win another federal election, that number spikes to nearly 30%. That's almost 1/3 of Alberta openly ready to walk out of Confederation.
The Alberta independence movement has evolved into a coordinated 4-province rebellion that reads like a geopolitical thriller.
But here's where it gets complicated. You can't talk about Alberta's future, or Saskatchewan's for that matter, without talking about Indigenous treaty rights. Every referendum, every autonomy push, every firewall measure bumps up against a legal and moral question. Who actually gets to decide the land's future?
It's called WEXIT, a proposed multi-provisional exit from the Canadian Confederation.
Indigenous groups have been clear. Any move towards separation or autonomy must respect historic treaties and legal protections. Those aren't optional. They're binding, both morally and legally. For Ottawa, that's a handy tool. They can use treaty obligations to stall separatist moves, to say, slow down.
Every time you see an older guy with a much younger woman, you can bet he's doing this 15-second shower trick.
You can't do that without us. But supporters of independence see that as interference dressed up in legalese. Another example of Ottawa hiding behind paperwork instead of dealing with the core issue.
When the federal government often comes calling with an offer to help, it's meager and it has a lot of strings attached. But meanwhile, we've got a lot of big issues that the federal government needs to deal with.
And regulating,
for instance, on the issue of Indigenous health, which is an area where...
And yet, the Indigenous factor can't be brushed aside. It's a real complication, and it raises deeper questions about sovereignty, ownership, and whose voices carry the most weight in deciding the West's destiny. Even separatist supporters know that if they bulldoze through treaty rights, they'll ignite a firestorm that makes Ottawa's opposition look like a summer breeze. So the West has to tread carefully, even as frustration grows.
Alberta has one of the biggest problems when I look across the country.
Meanwhile, the East-West divide is cracking wider by the day. Alberta and Saskatchewan aren't just grumbling anymore. They're openly defying Ottawa's rules. From net zero deadlines to carbon taxes to trade restrictions, the prairie provinces have decided they're done playing along. And it's not just Alberta leading the charge. Saskatchewan has joined in, shoulder to shoulder, warning Ottawa that their patience is running out too. Even British Columbia, which usually dances to its own tune, has started to voice sympathy. They might not be waving the WEXIT flag, but they share the feeling of being overlooked, ignored, treated as an afterthought by Central Canada.
Taxes go from west
When
to east
provinces that rarely agree on anything start nodding along to Alberta's complaints, you know the problem isn't just in one province, it's systemic.
But he's going to be bringing forward a extremely responsible and sober approach to dealing with all provinces, and Alberta at the top of that list.
And what does Ottawa do in response? Carney shuffles his cabinet, but instead of bringing in new Western voices, he recycles old Trudeau-era figures. To the West, it's proof that Ottawa isn't listening. Same faces, same policies, same outsider mentality. The message feels clear. The West isn't a partner, it's a colony. A resource colony whose oil, gas, and agriculture are good enough to bankroll federal budgets, but whose opinions don't count when it comes to real decision-making. WEXIT may not just be a threat anymore. It may be the bombshell that shatters Canada's future. Like this video and subscribe to the channel to get more updates.
Yep, I think they're leaving. Okay, this guy's pretty good. I've been watching him for a while too. So here we go.
Fired the shot that Ottawa hoped would.
What's everyone think so far? Do you want them to become part of the United States?
Never come. And it isn't standing alone. You got Saskatchewan, Manitoba, even interior BC. They're all lining up behind it. Now, just remember looking back on
I'm for
Trudeau or Mark Carney clinging to their ivory towers, talking down from on high. And now Alberta is taking control of the wheel. So here's the thing. The United States is already at the table backing Alberta's exit plan. And this is Canada's worst nightmare. It's really bad for the Federation of Canada. It's not good. Because if Alberta goes, Saskatchewan's probably going to go also. That would spell the end of Canada as we know it.
What we're talking about tonight is Ottawa over. Do you want to hear the answer? Ottawa overtaxing us. I mentioned that at the beginning of the evening, that our program costs are 70% of all tax dollars. We only collect 40%. Ottawa collects 60%, and then they use political means to transfer it. Alberta, year after year, has
Jeff.
$20 to $25 billion that is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years. $600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province. You don't think we might be able to do a little bit more on social spending if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? You don't think we'd be able to cut taxes a bit if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? It is $5,000 per Albertan that every single year gets transferred out of this province for political reasons so that the Liberals can continue to spend it in places that vote Liberal. That is what is happening in the province and in the country.
Daniel Smith laid it out plain. Ottawa takes 60% of the taxes, and Alberta only collects 40%. Yet they are carrying the load year after year. 20 to 22 billion dollars leaves Alberta, not because they can't manage their money, but because Ottawa funnels it to Quebec and Ontario for political survival. That's $5,000 stolen from every Albertan annually, and over $600 billion stripped in the last 50 years. That's not fair share. That is a rigged system designed to keep you, Alberta, to keep Liberal strongholds fat. Oh, and wait. Who's cheering this scheme? Oh, yeah, that's right. Mark Carney, the globalist banker who thinks Alberta is dumb, who should keep paying for someone else's dreams. Carney calls himself a leader. He's not. The reality is that he is an architect of an economic shakedown that spells doom. It is turning Alberta into a colony for Ottawa's agenda. Alberta could have cut taxes, could have built infrastructure, and funded world-class social programs if the money stayed. I'm angry for Alberta. It is very frustrating to look at things and see that Alberta is just getting so screwed over so bad. Instead, it's going to buy Liberal votes. That's the raw truth. Carney and formerly Trudeau, they wanted silence, complacency, compliant, willing people to pay the bills forever. Their bills. It's like, why don't they take care of their own stuff?
Everyone's talking about this Celtic salt trick that gets any man hard 100%. And never failing in bed.
Socialism.
Does it really?
And leave Alberta alone. And Albertans are waking up now. They're done being lectured by elites who fly in from Davos while draining their province dry. This isn't about numbers, it's about freedom, fairness, and Alberta is standing up for a broken confederation.
Scale. They control the
Premier
media
Daniel
up there,
Smith argues
Gregory.
a recent by-election is proof Alberta's
stations,
separatist movement has never had more support, pointing to one rural riding where the Alberta Republican Party earned about 17% of the vote.
I take that seriously, and I hope that the federal government takes that seriously.
Smith believes separatist sentiments were created by Ottawa. She argues it's up to the federal government to fix it, pitching proposals like coast-to-coast oil and gas shipping access.
If they make the changes that we're requesting, then I suspect they can take the air out of that movement.
Federal Minister Chrystia Freeland also spoke at the Calgary News Conference.
This lady here,
she points to incoming legislation that gives Ottawa the power to fast-track projects intended to boost the national economy. She says Ottawa wants to build with Alberta.
That's going to be great for Alberta. It's going to be great for all of Canada. And I think that's actually what Albertans want. I think it's what Canadians want.
Former Deputy Premier Thomas Lukaszuk says he believes the Alberta Republican Party failed to snag a seat in the legislature for a reason.
17% in a rural riding may sound small to Ottawa insiders, but that is a signal flare. Nearly 1 in 5 voters are lining up behind the Alberta Republican Party. That is showing separatism. That's not fringe. It's becoming mainstream. I've said it many times in these videos. things are happening. And Carney, if he wants to keep Canada together, he's got to stop it. Daniel Smith is right. These sentiments didn't appear out of thin air. Ottawa created this monster, so to speak, by draining them, Alberta's resources, Saskatchewan's, Manitoba, screwing over all these provinces, draining resources, blocking pipelines, and mocking Albertans for daring to demand fairness. Like, Chrystia Freeland now wants us to believe that fast-tracked projects will fix decades of betrayal?
Out and out commie.
How fast is fast? Okay, how fast is fast? It's not that fast. But Albertans know the game. They know what they're playing. Okay, Ottawa's projects always come with conditions, delays, outright cancellations. Once Quebec or Ontario complains, they're the favorite child, it seems. Keystone XL, Northern Gateway Energy East, all dead. All could have resurrected Canada in such a profound and wonderful way. But no, Ottawa folded. Promises mean nothing when a record is littered with broken deals and ruined everyday Canadians' lives. They've lost billions. Billions. And let's not forget Mark Carney. He praises central planning and higher taxes while ignoring the obvious. Alberta, Saskatchewan, they've powered Canada's prosperity for decades and gotten punishment in return. If Ottawa truly wants to build with Alberta, they should give them coast-to-coast access for oil and gas tomorrow. No excuses. Get the job done. Be Trump.
If they had a Trump, it would get done.
If Trump were president, oh, holy smokes, when he got in, heads would roll. And the people would fill the streets in support. Oh my gosh.
They want poor and the rich. They don't want
wonderful
any
change.
class. They can control the poor.
But instead, they invent new legislation to expand federal power, making sure Alberta's wealth remains under their thumb. Thomas Lucas says separatists didn't win a seat. Sure, fair enough. But politics is never static and set in stone. Movement grows when people are ignored. 17% today can become 30 tomorrow and 50 the next election. Okay? Momentum is a dangerous thing in politics. Ottawa laughs now, but the ground is shifting under their feet. Albertans are finished waiting. Either Ottawa finally treats Alberta as an equal, or the separatist movement will turn that 17% into a majority.
So a bit of work obviously to be done there, but hypothetically, if that work was done and a vote came down to it, is it possible for a province to essentially become its own country, and how would that look?
Well, as a matter of Canadian constitution law, there'd have to be some negotiation, and suppose that may or may not occur. Now, if Saskatchewan or Alberta were simply to declare themselves independent states, and other states were to recognize them as independent states, and the government of Canada ceased to have any control over Saskatchewan, Alberta, it may be that de facto they would become independent states as a matter of international law.
This so-called constitutional roadblock Ottawa keeps waving around is nothing more than fear politics. The truth is very simple. If Alberta or Saskatchewan want to vote to leave, and if they get the number of votes for the referendum, if it happens, and if other nations, particularly the United States, recognized that sovereignty or the bid to become one of their states, Ottawa would lose its grip overnight. They couldn't stop it. What are you going to do? The two most powerful nations in the world are China and the United States. And the United States is right next to Canada. Right there.
And right now,
how are they going to stop it? They can't.
They'd allow it to happen. Now, if someone like
this isn't speculation. Even Canada's own Supreme Court has admitted the possibility of de facto independence. You cannot stop reality, Carney, with a legal memo. Can't stop it. You want to know how you stop it? Unleash energy. Now, sure, the elites in Ottawa love to drag the 1998 Quebec secession reference out of the closet at times, as if it's the ultimate Trump card.
Don't eat,
But remember, Quebec never had Alberta's resources.
And so you become a good little commie.
Or continental leverage. The prairie provinces aren't negotiating from weakness. They're negotiating as the economic workhorse juggernaut of North America. Global markets do not care about Ottawa's legal theory. They care about energy, food, stability, economic reality. Alberta and Saskatchewan provide all three. As for the treaty issue, let's be honest. Ottawa has used Indigenous treaties as a shield when it suits their politics, while ignoring those same voices when pipelines.
I'm a little nervous because I have no clue what's about to happen, but this could either be a total disaster or the world's greatest.
Or prosperity are on the line. Interesting. If independence came, those treaties would have to be renegotiated directly, respectfully, and with proper guarantees. That's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to finally address grievances Ottawa has buried for generations. So, the establishment can keep chanting unconstitutional all they want. A threat to the Federation, sure. But the reality is Alberta doesn't need permission from Carney or
India is pretty
Trudeau
big too,
to be free.
I agree.
If the will of the people
China
lines
does have
up
a lot of
with international
power
recognition,
because they have a lot of
independence
slave labor,
becomes
basically.
a matter of when,
So they
not
can
if.
crank
While
out.
some wonder whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada, the person in charge of Alberta elections wonders whether the wording of a proposed referendum question should even be allowed on a ballot. The province's chief electoral officer asked a judge to weigh in on whether or not it violates the Constitution.
This is nothing more or less than an attempt at delay, and from our perspective, it's an abusive process.
The question proposed by separatist group Alberta Prosperity Project: do you agree that the province of Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province in Canada? The Premier and Justice Minister pushed back against the electoral officer, now saying Alberta's government believes that the proposal is not unconstitutional and therefore should be approved and permitted to proceed.
Now we see the latest Ottawa tactic, weaponizing procedure to stall democracy. The chief electoral officer doesn't want Albertans to even see the referendum question on a ballot.
Hi, Jarrett.
Think about that. Instead of trusting citizens to decide their fate, bureaucrats are running to judges to delay and derail the process. That's not democracy. That's control. Tyranny, even. The question itself couldn't be clearer. Do you agree that Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province in Canada? Or join the United States and potentially Saskatchewan as the 51st and 52nd state of the United States?
Actually, I think 3 provinces would
Plain,
leave.
direct, and exactly the kind of question voters are capable of answering just fine. Yet Ottawa loyalists call it unconstitutional before a single vote has even been cast. That's the fear of talking. The fear of provinces taking control of their future. You see, for the first time, Alberta's Premier and Justice Minister are standing firm, telling the Elections Commissioner to let the people decide. That's unprecedented and necessary, because if Ottawa's game is an endless delay, Alberta's answer has to be an unshakable resolve. Get the vote. Put it to the people. Critics like Luke Hazak argue most Albertans want nothing to do with separation. Okay. But if that's true, why are they so afraid of the ballot? If Ottawa had confidence in its position, it would welcome the challenge of referendum. It would win it easily and move on. No stress. Because things are fine, right? Things are great. The economy's thriving. You don't have families suffering and going to food banks. You don't have farmers struggling with supply chain issues or buying power. Oh, no, everything's fine. But we all know that's not true. We're seeing panic and obstruction. Even the Conservative leader admits it. The pay up and shut up era is ending. Alberta has carried Canada long enough. If separation is painful, and it would be in a way, and costly, yes, as the experts warn, and I agree, there would be some pain, sure, because it is a drastic change. Well, then maybe Ottawa should consider why Albertans are ready to endure that cost in the first place, rather than live under a system that robs them year after year. Moreover, the signatures are stacking up faster than Ottawa ever imagined. What was once dismissed as coffee shop vibes, chatter, meant nothing. Now, that's hard numbers staring the capital in the face.
Their threshold's a
The
lot
Alberta
lower.
Prosperity Project already has over 100,000 signatures on a commitment to vote yes, I believe, on a referendum on Alberta
They've got plenty
separation.
of time to
That's
get
more than
more.
56% to a threshold of 177,000. Like, that's looking pretty good. Albertans will get a chance to leave Canada. So, guys, let's work on making sure that Alberta, Saskatchewan,
Even if they
Manitoba,
become a separate
Yukon,
state, it would help America.
all the
do proper
provinces
deals with
that
them.
want freedom from this
China's economically weak compared to India.
tyrannical Ottawan government
I know that they're
get a
hurting
clear
right
mandate
now,
when
and
they do trigger
they
the
don't
referendum.
allow a lot of American goods to go into their country.
Oh, the change would be
Gregory.
massive. This is no longer theory. That's momentum in motion. Crossing 100,000 signatures
Well, they definitely make
proves
everyone
it.
work there,
Like,
even for small jobs.
Albertans are serious. They're not just angry. That's over
We lead them in
halfway to the
technology.
legal
They
threshold,
steal
and
the
once the line is
technology they
crossed,
get mostly.
Ottawa
They
has no procedural
create it
excuse left.
themselves.
The people will demand a vote. Critics call it fringe. Okay? But 100,000 Albertans signed their names. That says otherwise. This is the point where movements turn into mandates. If the rest of the Western provinces join in, oh boy, pressure will explode beyond comprehension, beyond Ottawa.
The body scanner reveals the brutal
Sorry
truth
about
about
the
your
ads.
body that your regular scale will never
Keep
tell
popping
you.
up.
For weeks, my
I skip them as quick as
They
I
won't be able to
possibly
stop
can.
it. Sure, it can try to stall, lecture, or threaten, but democracy has already moved ahead of them.
For a first time in the history of this province, and probably in Canada, Premier and the Minister of Justice, who's a lawyer himself, have decided to direct the Elections Commissioner on what he should and should not do.
Well, we don't think that the province is lining up on our side with this matter. They're simply saying that there's legislation in place that's clearly intended to have Albertans vote on issues of public importance.
And that's why
We have
Luke
a lot of the
Hasek has his
Weebans
own
and
petition
Christians.
underway to ask whether
You're
Alberta
not supposed to
should
be allowed to be
remain
a
in
Christian
Canada
planning
rather
either.
than separate.
The vast majority of us want nothing to do with it. We want to focus on what's good for Canada, what's good for Alberta, and frankly, what's good for Canada internationally.
While in Calgary, Canada's Conservative leader suggested focusing on the energy sector instead.
And what they're saying is the era of pay up and shut up has got to come to an end. Alberta deserves a better deal within Canada. And one of the ways we make that happen, one of the ways we unite our country, is to produce our resources.
Experts say the battle over the possible referendum questions is just a sample of the long, expensive process separation would involve.
Now, Thomas wants you to believe the majority of Albertans want nothing to do with it. Here's the reality. If he was that confident, he wouldn't need a counter petition just to keep Alberta chained to Ottawa. His message is not strength. That's fear. Because if you truly fear something, why would you do that? Why? It's because there's a part of you somewhere that goes, this could actually happen. And it proves exactly what I'm saying, what Albertans have felt for decades. The establishment is terrified of letting people decide for themselves because they genuinely believe that they know
Now
better.
they got the mainstream media.
I know better.
A lot of the YouTubers
I'm more educated. I've seen more of the world.
Them leaving Canada.
You, everyday people, everyday Canadians, you're nothing.
A lot of these other communist
You don't know
anyone
what
paying
I know.
attention to what's happening in France? It
How
looks like the
insulting and
government's
irritating is
about to
that?
fall.
The Premier and Justice
bad
Minister
over there in
are
France.
doing what no one has dared to do before,
England's not
telling the
too far behind
Elections
them.
Commissioner to stop blocking democracy.
Keep letting in illegals, and there's going to be almost like
That's
civil
leadership.
warfare.
It's inspiring.
That's kind of what
Albertans are
globalists
tired of
want.
bureaucrats pulling tricks to stall a legitimate vote. If the people want to decide the future of its province, no commissioner or judge has the moral authority to stand in the way. Now, we got a judge stepping in the next week to decide if the question itself is constitutional. I mean, think about that stupidity. They're debating whether Albertans even have the right to ask the question? Doesn't that alone tell you how fragile Ottawa's grip on reality really is? Because they know once the signatures are gathered, once the petitions are filed, and once the question is on the ballot, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. Something massive could change. The conversation has already shifted.
I'll keep an
It's
eye
not
on
about
this.
whether Alberta can leave. It's about when.
From what I'm seeing up there, it's
The rest
growing.
is just noise
growing
from
and
politicians clinging to a system that is
Because
collapsing
the
under its own
government
weight.
is so commie.
And it's their fault. That's all that I have for you today, guys. From
What you
us
see
here at the
what's
Zone
going on
Media
in New York
Network, I'm
City.
Griffin, your host.
What's
Feel free to
drunk
head
at
on
in
over
New
to
York
American
City.
Zone for all the latest American news. And don't forget
happening there.
to like, subscribe, comment down below, and let me know what you guys think.
All right,
Who would replace
I'm going to
Carney
play a
as the Prime
couple
Minister?
funny clips here quick to end this out. Get you over to the Rebel Chicks right after that. A couple short clips.
Get comfortable. Bring the best libs that Utah has to offer. Counting or not counting gang violence? Great.
If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful,
because I was closing some stuff.
If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have